Hello. Okay, do you want to get us started?
So we'll bring call the meeting to order then.
Second.
Thank you. So before we get started on the agenda pieces, I do want to recognize that we have some guests this evening who will be introducing shortly, but I did want to welcome them officially and thank everyone else for coming this evening as well. I know that the change in schedule from yesterday to today threw several people off, and that is completely my fault. So I apologize. I had a panel discussion, an international panel discussion yesterday that kind of I couldn't get out of. So I hope everyone will understand that, and I'll hand it over to Steve.
Okay, so I don't think we have a quorum yet. The first order of business is always to review the minutes. But we also then wanted to have our guests who are in the board development process introduce themselves. Now we are short board members who I assume will be coming late. I know Ken can't make it.
And Steve, I have to leave in about 20 minutes, so.
But those who aren't here can watch the recording for the introduction. Does that work for you, Wojka? So we should proceed with the plan. So do you want to introduce our three visitors?
So in no particular order, I think maybe just in how they came to us is first Ms. Nermeen Ahmad. She is coming to us to help organize and ensure that we have compliance across all of the plethora of data and documents that are required. I will let Nermeen introduce herself though.
I'll keep it brief. I'm assuming that people have been able to see my resume. Thank you, Wojka, for the introduction. And thank you for allowing me to join you tonight. It's been my honor to go through the interview process so far, meeting Brandy and Ken, Margaret and Steve. When Wojka asked me to consider joining you as board secretary, I was intrigued. I have held a similar position on different boards, and it carries enormous responsibility. Having researched the school, reflected on your mission, your vision, and your origin story, which I learned yesterday, and having benefited from the very straightforward perceptions of each person that I spoke with, it became clear this was a team that I'd really enjoyed collaborating with, achieving not only the renewal of the charter, but beyond that, bringing the school through its next focused growth phase. It seems there's an opportunity for me to bring some of my strengths to the board, the ability to hear how people envision differently and together, to create a path forward in which we all network our knowledge, to pull together towards a common goal. In Swahili, this is called Harambee, when you pull together and join together to achieve together. My gift has been the ability to bring very different perspectives to achieve a cultural shift through which mission and vision are not interpreted very differently, but are instilled as a common understanding across the many parts of the school, whether operational, buildings, teaching, learning, parenting. If we cannot give children the tools to tackle life's challenges early on, if we underestimate their ability to acquire knowledge, we do them and ourselves a serious disservice. When I was 12, half the girls in my class were married off. Fortunately, my parents and my teachers unlocked my desire to know. Aiming high takes belief and courage. Meeting each person where they are takes dedication. From what I've seen, you have that and more. So allow me to create the Harambee with you.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. And just also, I think a very important note is that she lives very close to the school. So you might be seeing her more than you would ever possibly see me. She's around the corner from you. But thank you for that introduction. And next would be Dr. Natasha Howard, who some of you may remember from previous renewal cycles. She's very dedicated to education. I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Howard.
Hi, everyone. First, let me just say it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate you allowing me to join. I am not even going to try to be as eloquent as Ms. Maud in my introduction. I am currently a consultant and I work with both authorizers and with schools. Prior to becoming a consultant, I worked as an authorizer in both the district and statewide office. And throughout all of the years that I've worked in schools, around school, in education, I've felt just one step removed from the real work. And so that is what appeals to me about being on a board, is to really roll up my sleeves and put all of my energy and passion into student success. And I don't pretend to have expertise in curriculum or in data. I think the strength that I bring to a situation is the ability to ask questions, and particularly my focus on capacity and organization. So I am here just to observe, and hopefully we'll have a chance to meet with additional board members in the next couple of weeks. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much for that. I look forward to having someone else ask a plethora of questions. I look very, very forward to that. And so also on the call with us today is Ms. Samantha Diaz. Samantha, welcome. Samantha comes to us from Castle Bridge, although I don't want that to define her, so I will hand it over to you and let you define yourself, Ms. Diaz.
Hi, thank you, Boyka. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be brief because I'm like, oh, Dr. Natasha Howard and Nermin Ahmad, they were so eloquent. And now I'm just going to come on here and say I'm a second and third grade teacher at Castlebridge. I adjunct at City College in BMCC, and I teach early childhood courses. And I know Boyka through a colleague of mine, very close friend of mine, and never served on a board before. And I'm just really looking forward to learning with you all, working with you all, and just kind of doing the work together, and whatever being on a board involves, I'm willing to work on it with you all. I know Harlem Link Charter School. I think I went to when I went to Bank Street for my SBL. I think a person that works at Harlem Link was doing it with me, because I remember hearing about Harlem Link a lot from her. All good things. So I am really looking forward to this, because can't wait to learn from you all too, and work with you all and know what this is all about. So I'll stop there. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Wicca, you've brought an amazing group together here. This is several very distinct angles and approaches that will be close to our board. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to working with all of them. Did you hear me just now when I said Samantha seemed to be predestined to be here?
No.
Oh, okay, I was still muted. But thank you, Samantha, for that. Being that you've already had that link with Harlem Link is I don't want to say weird, but it's great that you've had exposure already. Thank you, Steve.
So the next, we do have a quorum now, so we can approve the minutes or vote on the minutes. So here are the minutes. Board members have had a chance to read them. If you want to, anybody would like to propose approval?
Motion to approve.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Boyka.
Sorry, no, I was just saying motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I second that.
Thank you. Any nays? So approved.
Okay, I'm going to pass it over to either Doug or Edward, whoever would like to handle the financial report.
I'll go. I'll take it over. So I just want to introduce myself to some of the folks who are on for the first time. I'm Doug Anderson. I am the finance director at Harlem Link. Therefore, I take care of most of the finance, if not all. Sorry. So just going to give a quick overview and point out some quick things. So with our board meeting being earlier in the month, historically it's been a little bit later. And what that does is it allows the finance department time to actually close out the books, because as the month hits, September 30th, we still get bills that represent September that comes in a part of the second week. So there's a good chance that some of the numbers for September numbers may fluctuate, increase. We have placed some placeholders for things that we earmarked for. So I just wanted to put that caveat out. So first I'm going to start with state grant. So we budgeted for 720. Right now we have 768,000 for the month. That's due to our enrollment. We budgeted for 445, I believe, off the top of my head. Right now we're working on bringing our enrollment up. We're slightly under enrolled for the budget. So we're actively doing things to increase that. We have our pre-K revenue at 36,440. Essentially, that's what we have received so far. Contributions, not much. We have our federal grants. We have received $143,000. We budgeted for this month, $29,000. The reason there's a big increase, it has to do with we received 20% of our ARP funds, which is American, I forget, there's so many acronyms. I think it's American, I can't tell you, but there's so many acronyms and so much money that we've gotten due to the pandemic. We were slated $601,000. We received 20%. That was not a part of this budget. So we got the money in September. That's why it's showing that we are, drastically over $114,000 for our federal grants. As we move down, we're looking at our personnel line. It says we budgeted 592,000, and we have for that month, year to date, which would be, sorry, not year to, for the month is 605,000. That represents several different things. That 13,000 that we're over. We brought in a little extra people for our paid extra things for some of our staff to take care of certain things, so that those numbers are reflected in there. However, year to date, well, yes, year to date for our fiscal year, we're under 556,000. That's a little misleading, and we are going to be not correcting it, but adjusting it so it displays differently for the board. The way we pay our teachers are over a 12-month period, but our teachers accrue their money in 10.5. So we pay them for all of July and a portion of September. So it's kind of like a net effect that happens the first month. So it always looks like we have this big surplus in personnel when it's usually not that big. So we're not 556K over under in the surplus. We're probably somewhere around, maybe $150,000. I'll get those exact numbers out on the next board meeting. Other things that I wanted to point out is if we look at our classroom and curriculum, it shows that for the month of September, we spent $26,000 and we budgeted $95,000. We started closing out the books last week. We didn't have, again, as I mentioned, we didn't have enough time to break down what portion of our Amazon bill and credit card went to each particular line. Most of our Amazon charges are typically for our classroom, but there's, there's odds and ends of that. So, there's about 100 transactions. So what we do is we park it at the curriculum classroom, we go back, and then we parse out each transaction and put them where they need to be. So that surplus is not an actual surplus for that particular line, but it captures a real expense. So you would see the numbers on that classroom curriculum for the month of September, you'll see it decrease, but those numbers will shift in various other lines, such as office expense. It may go to, personal development or professional development. So I want to point that out. And that's it for here. If anyone have any questions around our P&L, I'll move to our balance sheet. Any questions? Okay, going to the balance sheet. So this is cash on hand. So all bank accounts, we have $4.8 million. We have accounts receivable around $285,000, and then we have other assets in there. So total current assets is $5.2 million. Fixed assets, what I want to point out is if we drop down and look at our liabilities, we was able to get our PPP loan forgiven. That amount was $1.3 million. I think that took place in August, July, yes, July. And I sent that information out to the finance committee. So we have not yet transferred that money, those monies over to the revenue part. And the reason why was I wanted to, have a hard number to show to the board that this money will be going from in July 1.9, since the board haven't had a finance report. This is their first finance report of the school year. So next month, you'll see those numbers drastically shift, and just wanted to let the board know as a whole that it was forgiven. And that's kind of concluding the finances. We have good cash on hand, bills are paid. We don't have such a high accounts receivable. The reason right now is since we're again closing out last year's audit with so many moving parts, our focus at the school has been around our staff and student safety. So it's a all hands on deck. So the numbers are right, but our focus is our student and staff safety. As far as closing out the audit for FY21, I'm still working with our auditors. It's again, at this time of the year, we would have normally been closed. The auditors will be coming to our next board meeting, typically reporting out the findings for last year's audit. I believe we will still be able to probably meet that deadline, and will not be filing for an extension for our 990, which is our taxes, and have our auditors hopefully at our next board meeting to report out findings, if any, or just overall numbers for last year. Any questions?
Can you speak again as to how we're absorbing the under enrollment? Is it because we budget so conservatively with respect to, and where do we budget conservatively? I'm trying to understand where we've made up.
So we've budgeted for 445. We have, help me out with this. I think as of now we have like 4 or 5.
I'm gonna do a full enrollment recap coming up next, but maybe I could take a stab at answering it. I think that the picture that the numbers paint is a little misleading because it's so early in the year.
Cool.
So the first chart, which is the budget actuals, looks rosier than it really is, and the second chart, which is like what cash reserves do we have, looks worse than it really is. So what I mean by that is 2 factors in play. Our enrollment is down. It's the lowest as a percentage of the budgeted number that's been in many years. And we'll talk about that coming up next. So, and I'll talk a little bit about why I think the budget numbers look differently than what I'm describing. But the presence of all this federal money from the Biden administration isn't even appearing on any of these documents. So we will draw it down as we spend it. And we are doing some things just because we have this money, like hiring additional staff that we wouldn't ordinarily do. But we're also using it to shore up funding to keep the school going, which is part of the language of the grant. So in a sense, some of the Biden bucks is there to cover any enrollment shortfalls, which is not the plan, but it's a kind of emergency use funds. But the actual dollar amount, if you look at the state grant, it says we have actually received $768,000. Those are based on projections. So we only filed the first.
I'm sorry, which item?
The main dollar amount for revenue, or the $2.3 million that we've gotten for the year.
Got
We have to file invoices with the city based on our student enrollment every 2 months, and it starts in June, so it's in advance, which is wonderful because there was a time when we were told that we might have to file like at the time or in arrears and recover funds and just float the money. But the charter law for a long time has given us this advance payment of our tuition. So June 1st, we projected, whatever was in our budget and took a little bit off just to be safe. And then August 1st, we did the same thing. And we ended up receiving the projected number, and there will be adjustments over the course of the year. So now it's October, we filed the first in-school year invoice that has lower numbers as the actual numbers. So the next payment will be a lot lower than the previous payment. So you will see these numbers drop, and you will see the revenue look lower and the projections shift. We don't usually do projections for the year until around December for this reason, but it's just becoming ingrained as a habit for the board to see projections all the time. And things haven't been as lumpy and radical as they are this year with this lower enrollment that we have. So things have been much more predictable than they are right now.
Everything.
Did I say anything, Doug, that you want to add to? And we'll talk enrollment.
Nope,
Yeah,
that's
I'm going to say I didn't understand that explanation. It was a little too in the weeds.
so.
You're saying the 2,161,933 number. Where does the under enrollment live?
Okay, so right now it's not reflected in it because it's all projected, if that makes sense. So when we start in July to say what we're going to have in September, so we use the number that we budgeted for our projection, and then we actually get our actual numbers. We start reporting like this month, and then they will adjust it. It's constantly fluctuate because students come and go. So every student right now, I think it's 16,000, like 16,000 some change. So if a student comes in half of the year, then we get half of that money. So those numbers just constantly shift with the invoicing. Does that help?
That does. Thank you.
Okay. And also, as Steve said, we've gotten so much money from Biden administration, and I'm going to be sending that out to the board as a whole to say what money we have got. So right now, we some of the money that we have received was from the 601,000. I was 20%. I applied for a let's call it like an emergency technology grant. We was able to get an additional $104,000, which allows every student at our school to have a laptop. So we have 200, and we purchased 180. So we will be purchasing another 220 by the middle of next week. And those monies are not even reflected in here as well.
There's a question. Was the grant money actually used to hire staff? And if so, how many?
Yes, so we used, I'm trying to think, so many acronyms. I can't tell you which grant we've used, but we've used some money to hire case managers and an additional social workers. We've also used money to hire some, overall I call them deans, so that is like supporting classroom teachers that can help pull out a kid or sit with a kid. I can give you those hard numbers outside, but I don't have them exactly offhand. But overall, that's where the hiring went.
Voica, this is Peter. I'm sorry to say I have to leave now. I'll be interested in reading the reports of what transpires in the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Peter. Take care. And just a pause for a moment, Ms. Ahmad, if you needed to step off as well, I know you are on a different time zone. We would be okay with that too, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very kindly.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
So we'll come back to enrollment. I think that like I said, the numbers are a little bit misleading. The enrollment situation is not positive. It's a big challenge that we'll talk about. And we have some things in mind about how to address it.
Can I just interject one thing? When we see these numbers again, can you sort of break out the impact of it? Because I think the assumptions may not be consistent with prior years, right? So I think the board needs to see like worst case scenario and the impact and not the backfill on the additional dollars, because money is fungible, right? And so that money, while it is available, it would have been available for other things. So I think we just need to see the financial impact of under enrollment, and it has to be sort of broken out and clear.
Yeah, what I could do is for our next board meeting, because I can parse out and say this is our actual number of enrollment based on the actual cost, and have that as a side piece or addition to this report.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Like whatever way that, like, basically we're just trying to see what is, I sort of defer to you in terms of presentation and clarity. Just trying to see the.
And normally something like that, if you can bring it back up, Steve, for a second. It's usually when he brings, it's normally in the projections where we're usually pulling those actual numbers from the projections. Right. And right now it's so early to project, even though we're under enrollment. Like I just cut a check today so that we can do some more recruitment. That what it looks like today, there's a good chance, 1 or 2 students doesn't sound like a lot, but at, $17,000, that does change the budget a decent amount.
No, I guess the point I'm trying to make is we need to revisit what the assumptions are, because in COVID, the previous assumptions around backfilled kids may not be accurate.
Gotcha.
The model may be currently defective. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get that out for our next board meeting and have it as an addition.
Awesome. Cool.
You might get a little more clarity from the enrollment discussion that's coming up in a minute too. We had fund development on the agenda, and I had asked Josh to talk about Giving Tuesday, but Voica, I know you spoke to Ken. Did you want to open us up and spend a few minutes talking about what Ken wanted to share?
So definitely, Ken is feeling like we really need to make development a priority, particularly now that we would have additional people on the board and have time to dedicate to it. And in addition, the conversation, and I guess Peter just popped off, Peter, John, who's not with us, I don't think today, and Ken are really thinking that we need to bring something in to the school for those dollars. So donors want to see where their money is going, and we as a school want to provide something outstanding for our students. We don't want it to be wild and crazy, but we want to have something that enriches the lives of the students and where donors can understand where their money is going to. So Ken is definitely going to work with Josh to ramp up the development and funding piece for the board. And we will definitely hear from him, but I would like everyone to provide some ideas of what they think the school could do if the funding was available. And I would say that as an after-school program. And Steve and Margaret, you might, or Dan and Aviva, you might want to survey the parents or survey the kids. But we need to be sort of all minds in. But Ken will come up with his plan and share it with us for sure.
That's great, thank you. One of the methods we'll use is Giving Tuesday, which was a big success last year. Josh, do you want to just say a few words previewing it?
Hey everyone, I apologize if there's some voices in the background and dramatic lighting. I just moved, so it's not really all set up just yet. So Giving Tuesday is coming up this November 30th, so we are a month and a half away. We are currently putting together our platform for doing it. As Voika mentioned about specific things and seeing where the dollars are going, that's kind of where we're kind of figuring out right now. And once we're kind of settled in there, we'll be rolling out the campaign. For the people that are new here, just to kind of give you a heads up on how it's worked in the past, we usually have person-to-person campaigns where we have one hub page that collects all the donations, and everyone else gets their own individual donation page, and they can set their own goals. They could say it's 100, they could say it's 5,000, they could say it's 10,000, but then they could take the writing that I will be providing with everyone. Everyone will have a pre-made page of however they want, but they can adjust their writing based on their donor base. And we encourage people to get out and kind of just get people to donate. We try to start the push before Giving Tuesday because people like supporting a winner. And it's always more powerful when we have like 7, 10, 20 in there at the start of it, which is kind of how it has been the last few. Every single year we've kind of blown up the previous goal by a bit. It used to be like a big thing when we started Giving Tuesday with 7,000 and with 30. Last year, I think we started with 20 and we ended around 73. So one of the big things I just want to push out here, well, two big things. Number one, we are looking for 100% board involvement. This doesn't just go for Giving Tuesday and helping make it a success, but this also helps us for future grant writing to know that the board is completely bought in, and knowing that all the board is involved in giving what they can is a huge value. Now, how can you donate? So there's two ways board-wise. One, you can donate through the site when it's up. By next board meeting, I will be premiering it to everyone and giving everyone like a nice bit link and answering any questions. I'll even do a PowerPoint explaining how to get everything together. I'm sorry, Network for Good is the site that we do this through. They do take a tiny percentage. So if you would like to donate directly to the school, reach out to me and Doug. If you donate through him, I can have your donation applied to the Giving Tuesday page of your choice. Every single year, Peter and Ken usually have a friendly rivalry between their pages, or you can help an underdog over here, who knows. But anything that you guys can do to help, any way that you can reach out is of a huge help. And if you want to get involved beforehand, or you want to be more involved in the campaign and help us make it a success, and maybe even blow up our last year win of 73, please let me know, because we're always looking for more hands on deck. Does anyone have any questions?
Josh, tell us what the official day is for Giving Tuesday.
The official day is November 30th. Usually, so by the next meeting, the goal is to have, so I've made the prep sites already, but I wanted to finalize language. Voika, to what you were saying before, I think it's very powerful to have something specific. One of our fundraisers that we it was not Giving Tuesday, but a fundraiser that we had to pull off out of nowhere was our laptop fundraiser. And it was a very specific ask of saying $250, one laptop, one child. And it's very powerful, and people know where their dollar is going. So we're trying to figure out, based on what's kind of going on, what's the best thing to support. Obviously, we always want to support after school and start to finish. We're trying to figure out how to make sure that that language is a little bit more specific so people can feel that they're really making a difference, because first of all, they are, but it's important to kind of show them how they're making a difference. But by the next board meeting, which I believe is the middle of next month, there should be a good amount of child pages, is a good way to put it, already up between me, Ken, Peter, Steve, and anyone else that's kind of involved in the campaign. Usually anyone that's major with development, which includes the people I named, Margaret, Marianne Van Auken from start to finish, and Shanika Nelson from After All almost always have pages. I mean, Shanika's new this year, but she wants to get involved. So Giving Tuesday will be like a couple weeks after the next board meeting, but it'll give us a lot of time to kind of get our ducks in a row.
Josh, I'm going to tell you in advance, I'm horrible at raising money. So I
Okay.
don't know if I'm going to be brave like Peter and have my own page, but I'll see how it goes.
Well, I appreciate all your support, and even if you don't feel brave about it, we can always work together. We're all good, and we're all in this together, right?
Exactly.
Very
Thank
cool.
Everything
Any other
else-
last? Okay.
Go ahead.
Josh and or Steve, can you clarify the relationship between the board giving and Giving Tuesday, just so everyone's clear? So it's in addition to the board give, correct? Or in, I always forget, because I think we give like twice a year, so.
I thank you for the question. We always encourage more giving. However, we use Giving Tuesday as kind of a rallying point. If people want to give, this is a very good place to do it. It's a very public place to do it. It's a good way to kind of show everyone on the team is on board. Obviously, we always encourage more donations and helping where you can. Even if it's, instead of doing, for example, in Giving Tuesday, a lot of people like to give a lump sum. This is their giving for the year. Some people like Ken or John Reddick, who I think is on the call, they just donate once a month, and it's a small amount, but it adds up to a very large amount by the end of the year. And every single year, usually Ken and John ask me to, basically through Network for Good, I can put that donation and say we got it off-site from their other things, so that it doesn't need to be put through Network for Good specifically. Last year, actually, Brandy, you donated right before Giving Tuesday, and I think I asked you so that I could apply it to either you had your own page or I put it on Peter's or something.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But this, I would say Steve can correct me here, we ask that the board donates at least once a year. I'm not going to put a cap on how much you're allowed to donate per year, but if you're going to do it at any point, this is a great time because A, it's public facing, and B, it's close to the start of the school year. So for the rest of the year, when we're talking about, for example, applying for grants, we can be like, we have 100% board giving, we settled this already, and we want you to know that like everyone's on the same page kind of thing.
I think that's accurate. I think I would say that we want all the trustees to give early. So if we can have every trustee give at some level by the end of this month, we could go to town with foundation grants and say, we have 100% board giving. And the Giving Tuesday is an opportunity for you to go and get revenge on all your friends who ask you for money for their causes. So you are going out and bringing others into the fold. It's less about your gift for that event, but it's more for your network and spreading the word. Are we ready to move on to enrollment?
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so there are a few slides that I will go over. Margaret, please step in and interrupt me if you have anything to add, which she and I have worked on this extensively with Raquel. And this is information that was shared with the executive committee last week, so it's only a segment of that. These numbers are from a couple of weeks ago. They're basically accurate right now. There has been some ebb and flow. New students have arrived, others have moved. The story has been of a lot of displacement. We have not seen a complete evisceration of our student body. We have pretty strong numbers compared to what we expected to happen. I'll get into that in a couple of slides later with our projections. But we have, looking at the maximum number of seats available at the school, we have 90 vacancies. We don't budget that high a number, we budget a cushion. And then the vacancies are not spread evenly across the grades. You can see the upper grades have fewer vacancies than lower grades, which is something of concern because we want to be able to fill up seats and have those students continue with us. This is sometimes the case, it varies over the years, but this is the current number picture, enrollment by grade. Budgetarily, what does that mean? So the next 3 slides, we'll talk about that, and I think hopefully give a little more clarity, Brandon, to your question. We're looking at K-5 more than we are at pre-K because pre-K tends to be filled up, and because that may not be true in future years, by the way, as more charters take on pre-K, and because there's a higher per pupil rate for K-5. So the budget is impacted more by a K-5 student not being here than a pre-K student not being here. So the total number is 435 students from K-5. And that number currently sits at 381. And again, this is a little bit different because a couple weeks have passed. And we also get additional dollars for special education students who have integrated co-teaching as their setting. We have integrated co-teaching in every grade, and in most grades we have 2 and sometimes 3 ICT classrooms. So we do need this money to fund the second teacher in those classrooms. So the story is more students left, including graduated, than enrolled. And that's, of course, how you end up with a deficit. Over the summer, the board looked at weekly updates about, or the executive committee looked at weekly updates on what we expected to happen. We expected 322 students to return, but we had a lot of uncertainty because a lot of families didn't answer our poll, didn't respond to phone calls and so on. So we thought as many as 370 students might return. That was the maximum of students who didn't say no, and as few as 300 might return. But we used kind of algorithms based on past experience of who didn't respond and came up with 322 and 325 actually returned. The asterisk is a couple of students have moved away to other states since school began. So the movement out of state has been high and it's been continuing. The other question was how many new students will enroll? And we use different admit levels based on behaviors, how far in the process do parents get to determine whether or not they're going to show up, and use an algorithm to decide what the yield will be. Like a college does. Colleges admit more students than they will enroll because they know that some of those students will opt to go to Georgetown instead of Yale, for example, to use a random example. We actually had more students enroll than we expected, which I think speaks to one of the solutions to this problem that I'll talk about, and Margaret and I will talk about in a future slide. And we had the same number of special education students right now as budgeted. So we don't have any additional money from the budget coming from special education, which has been true in the last couple of years. So what does this all mean? And this, I think, is the last slide about enrollment, and then we'll talk about what we're doing about it and take any questions, clarifying questions.
Can you just clarify what system projected means? Is that predictive software? I don't think we know what system means.
The system is just the set of algorithms we've developed over the years. It's just a bunch of formulas and output sheets.
Got it. That's what I thought. Okay.
If there were a system we could push a button and do this, it would be great, but we don't know. We do know the colleges use them. We've looked into those, but they don't quite apply. A lot of it's tuition based. That's different. Okay. I will say one thing about the system. For a college, you will, in the research I've learned, colleges count down payments as like the final step. If you put your $1,000 down, we know you're coming. So what we do is we ask families to purchase uniforms. We have a deeply discounted starter pack. We don't require them to purchase uniforms from us. They could buy uniforms anywhere, but we ask them to purchase them from us as a start, and we'll encourage them to do that by giving them a big discount. If we know they're going to buy a uniform, we have a 90%, up to 95% confidence that they'll enroll. So that's our down payment, and it actually saves the parent money. So we like to win-win situation. So what does that mean for the budget? And this is where you'll see if things stay just as they are, this is what you'll see in Doug's numbers at the end of the year. You'll see a $900,000 shortfall in our revenue, which is a huge amount of money, of course. It pales in comparison to what's available from the federal government, but none of us want to use that federal money to rely on shoring up budgetary shortfalls. If we wanted to lower class size, we should make a plan and say, let's lower class size and use the federal money to do that, not back into it. So none of this, that's not good governance or good leadership for us to say, let's just use the federal money to take care of it. The reality is, in the worst emergency case, that federal money is there to bolster our schools' budget, and we have lots of reserves to fall back on as we research what's going on and what are the long-term implications of this enrollment shift. So the larger point is we're going to make every effort, we have been, and we're increasing those efforts to fill the seats. And if we don't fill the seats, it's bad, and the effects are continuing in future years because the seats are empty in the lower grades. But fiscally, we're not at risk. We are in an organizational capacity, our ability to maintain a strong program and continue these systems and build is what's at risk. So fiscal fiduciary duty, I'm not concerned if I were a board member about the school falling apart. If this continues for years, of course, the school wouldn't survive. So this has to be addressed, has to be fixed. But the big issue is the instability of bringing on new students mid-year, the instability of having vacancies, having to fill them over the course of the next year and years. Margaret, do you want to add anything? And then we can take questions and then talk about what we're doing about it.
No, I don't think I could add anything more. I think this was really succinct. I think it's a concern, and I'm eager to address it in the short term as well as in the long term to make sure that we don't have enrollment issues moving forward.
Before we talk about what we're doing, are there any questions, clarifying questions or additional comments?
I don't want to say that I have a clarifying question, but I do want to stress that the entire board is extremely concerned about enrollment. And so not just enrollment for this year, but we should already be started on enrollment for next year. So I am looking forward to hearing what exactly is the plan to move forward and what is different than what we've been doing, because what we've been doing is not working. And then I would add to that I know we're saying that we can fall back on reserves, but we also should be looking at drawing down. So I want to know what that would look like, and that may not be able to be answered today. Maybe that's something that we're going to talk about in committee, or give you guys an opportunity to really think about how the structure of the school is. But it is on the table for us. So I just want to be clear on that.
Wait, when you say drawing down, you mean reducing expenses, just to clarify for everyone?
Reducing expenses, reducing staff, reducing, whatever it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what's different? Or are there any more questions, by the way, before Margaret?
Yeah, I have one more quick question. The money that is reserved, I guess the PPP loan and the Biden bucks, like what, can you clarify what you would have been using them for if you did not have to use the money for the enrollment shortfall, just so we sort of understand the impact?
I mean, I'll be honest, this money for me and others on the leadership team, our executive team will chime in. We've had a lot of discussions about it, but for me, this is COVID precautionary money. We used quite a bit last year on things like filling in the Chromebooks that we couldn't fundraise for, things like hiring staff to watch students on campus who were learning and their teachers were remote. So all the supplies, and we spent $10,000 on HEPA filters for classrooms. We spent $30,000 on air conditioning. So, and we don't know what the future holds with COVID. So if things take a turn for the worse and we have to shift gears again, we have this money there. That's to me what it's for. Doug mentioned there are some staff members that we added that's not a permanent position in the budget, but that may become a permanent position in the budget as we make decisions in the future that are addressing attendance and displacement issues, trying to track down families that were hard to reach, following up with aggressive contact because of high absenteeism. So that's my thought. I mean, we also have additional pedagogical staff that we've hired. We hired more teachers than we needed because we expected there might be attrition based on nationwide trends. We hired, we have positions available to us like additional assistant teachers to do small group training or student work based on our assessments. So the only thing I could say with certainty would be we would want more of that. But that also becomes a case of diminishing returns if we have too many staff and we don't have the program and the need that matches it.
Thank you, that's helpful.
So I think there's a combination of two things that I would share to describe how we're approaching enrollment now. One of them is technical and the other is about the approach itself. And the technical parts are things like doing a mailer, having a Facebook ad, sending home flyers to families, going to events and advertising the school that way. These are things that we've done for the last few years. And in the last 5 years, we've seen the number of applications decrease. At the same time, we've heard a lot of positive feedback from our families about how they like the school. So there's been a question, why have applications decreased? 5 years ago, we hit a peak. We had, I believe it's 6 times the number of applications that we received this year 5 years ago. And there was nothing that I just described that we did then that we haven't done in the last few years. So I think based on the data and based on doing some deeper investigation as we've gone through the operations transition with Rocky coming on, what's changed is the approach. 5 years ago, we still thought of ourselves as a small school. We were still growing. We still had the roots of, it was me and Margaret hitting the streets and going to the library and going to the YMCA. And it was all very, very personal. Over the last 5 years, we've gotten more systematic and process oriented as a school, which was necessary for us to grow up as an institution. But some of that personal touch has been lost. And this idea that relationships matter, which is one of the cornerstones of our school, has not extended to our enrollment process. And things like, and I'm going to say a few things that may surprise you. Some of the little things like the uniform expectation that I laid out, which has been true for over 10 years at our school, has not been handled in a way that honors the family members who are purchasing uniforms. We've given misinformation, misleading information, just because we tried to make things so automated. We purchased a piece of software that many charters use called Schoolment, and we put all of our enrollment processes into this system to save manpower. So that we didn't have any staff members typing up on spreadsheets and making errors. Instead, everything's done through Schoolment. We don't have parents having to come into the building and give us the Con-Ed bill to show proof of address for us to photocopy and hand it back to them. They can upload all of this through their Schoolment account. We don't have, we don't even have sometimes the home language survey done on a timely basis, because we used to do all these things at the same time in a big orientation where parents got individualized attention with multiple staff members. Those were really intensive times. But what I realized in looking back, and what Margaret and I have come across in looking at the data, is that personal touch, I think that we had this intuitive understanding that it was powerful back then, but we now see that since it's been lost, that sense of this is a special place, this is a different place, as the first impression has been lost as well. So families have great experiences with their teachers. Dan and Viva always say, what's happening in the 4 walls of the classroom, it's beautiful, it's powerful, it's irreplaceable. Another school can't match it. But that first impression, instead of having a friendly face talk to you and say, I'm so glad you're here, I'm so excited to meet your child and have you at our school, they're making an account and they're frustrated by whatever goes on the internet, it's a completely different experience. It just doesn't match. And couple that with the way that we've gone out and we've delegated, and we've had people on our team going out into these events and going into the community and talking about the school. But we haven't seen the return on that investment. And I think it's because that founding spirit has not, Margaret and I have not handed that off in an effective way to other people. So with the shift in our roles, we're really excited about being back out in the community more in this co-executive director role, bringing Rocky along with us, who has a lot of experience doing the same work as a founding operations and leadership team member at another charter school, and training other people on the team to do it with us in a way that I think more reflects what happens in the classroom and more reflect relationships matter as the first impression families get. So Boyka challenged me and says, word of mouth, what does that really mean? And you're right, like we need to show data that demonstrates that word of mouth is an effective tool. I had this intuitive understanding back then that when I tell a parent, go to your church and read this at the Sunday announcements, that we would see the next month, we would see 5 applications from that same building or that same neighborhood. And I know that was that congregation. I don't have the data to show that, but we're not seeing that anymore. We don't see that that same spirit translate, and the word of mouth it's not as effective because I know this as a parent too. If I don't have confidence in the office handling my child well and carefully, why would I recommend the school, no matter how great things are in the classroom? So I think that's a big shift. We are doing all those technical things. Margaret, you can fill in with anything I forget, but things like the mailer that Doug mentioned. We usually don't do one this time of the year. We do one in the winter, but we're doing one now. The way we're going to events and what Margaret and I are doing at events, which we would always be in the building, but now we're out more and mingling with people. We have a costume ball that we're planning. It's going to be outdoors. It's going to be a Halloween-oriented fun time. We would not do a table for enrollment, but this is an opportunity now that we're going to take to say to families, bring people, bring your friends, bring your family, and let's get them signed up for the school too. So we're doing all those technical things, but for me, it's about the approach, the forcefulness with which we share our vision and mission and how we show what we're about and not just say it, but actually show it.
Steve, can I say something? You and Margaret may have gotten lost, but I've been doing it all along because I speak to parents on the phone doing the calls, and I refer to myself as grandpa. I say, hey, think of me as grandpa. You need a connection. I'll be your grandpa. Or I tell the kids that. I got some of the kindergarten kids calling me, you my grandpa? Just to make them feel comfortable. One of the mothers cracked up yesterday. One kid today had the COVID test, but she missed lunch. I had chicken wings and fried rice. I said, yeah, split my lunch with me. Your family. I share my lunch with them. There are different ways we go about things and do things. And it's like, I know you guys get wrapped up a lot because you've got so many different things. And also, you depend so much on the technology. That's one of the things. It's like, wait a minute, don't depend so much on this technology because it, just walk over and put your hand on somebody's shoulder and say, hey, I miss not seeing you. Or we just hired an after school, one of our alumni. You saw his mother today, It's like, wait a minute, these are the things that make a difference and, shows that respect for our community, And it's like, you instilled it in us in the beginning. I don't know why it got lost in you guys, but I'm still doing it.
Think about for that.
John, I believe you. I've seen you in action. I get all those emails of all the things that you're doing. So thank you for that. Steve, I just want to push back a little bit though, because I'm afraid that just getting out and just building the relationships can take a long time. It's like building school culture all over again. And so will it be enough to increase enrollment by 100 for next year? I don't know. I honestly, I can't say I'm confident that that's going to be the case. So I would, I don't know if everyone saw John Barrett's email. I can't remember if he CC'd everyone on it, but he had some very good suggestions about how to aggressively market the school. And so I will share that with everyone so that they can see some of those ideas. And I'm going to ask you, Steve, to circle back to them and think about how we can incorporate them.
Also, Volk, if I can just intercede, Steve and Margaret actually went to the community affairs meeting at the 2-8 precinct virtually, and they've gotten a lot of resources from that. And that might be a beneficial thing as well, because it'll grab the community and also network us with a lot of different organizations.
Thank you for sharing that, John.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say one closing thing about enrollment, but we have other things to talk about enrollment. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, just being aware of the various like block associations and understanding when they're having like block parties and what have you. Apparently, I just got the email, but there's like an East Harlem block association party coming up. So things like that, we're just sort of getting small groups of people in the neighborhood, obviously, but I don't know if there's like a way to get the block associations, but I think that would be very helpful.
There's definitely a way to get a list of the events in Harlem, and there are quite a few of them. And I don't know if I said this before during one of our committee meetings, but I think it would be nice if there was representation, even from students. We have the African American Day Parade every year. There's no reason why we can't be marching down the street with our banner and doing some real engagement along the sidelines with, you know, with the fans. I don't want to say fans, with the attendees. I don't know for words, but I do think we need to go outside of our normal box. Okay.
The one thing I wanted to add was we're still also trying to get the context for what enrollment shifts are happening in the city. We know of charter schools that are undersubscribed. We know of a couple of charter schools that have grades that are filled. So we know this isn't a universal. We're waiting to hear the DOE's official enrollment numbers. Laura is hard at work providing us with any public information she can provide.
Our city council and the Senate would also like to know the enrollment numbers.
So we know that there's been shifts, demographic shifts, and just anecdotally, we have 28 students who left the state, which is a higher number than we usually see over the summer. There were students who left the state last year, but continued because we had virtual learning. So we had very high student retention a year ago, and it's a little bit lower this year. And I think we started some of the natural students leaving may have caught up with us because it was masked by virtual remote learning last year. Students can learn from anywhere. But just since school began, we've had Pennsylvania, we've had New Jersey, we've had, I believe, North Carolina, and at least one Florida. So we're filling up other states here with our students.
Steve, can you continue? Can you continue to break down enrollment for us by district as well, so that we can see that on the chart? I know we were doing it before, but it kind of disappeared.
Yeah, I think what you'll see in looking behind the numbers as a preview is 10026 has increased as a portion of enrollment compared to years past, which is the big goal. But if that means that enrollment drops overall, that's not a good goal anymore. But we'll definitely break that down.
Okay.
Any other enrollment comments, recruitment comments? Rocky, do you want to add anything?
No, I'm listening to Voica and I hear it, and we've been discussing it with Steve and Margaret every day. Literally, we meet about the urgency and making sure we're able to fill the seats and keep our enrollment numbers high.
And now I want to turn it over to the people who have to deal with mid-year enrollment and have to deal with vacancies and the impacts of that. And that would be our co-principals, Dan and Aviva. And I'm realizing that for our visitors and for Ms. Ahmad, if you're watching this as a video, we should be introducing ourselves as we go. So Mr. Reddick, longtime board member, founding board member, and part of our staff, who does pretty much everything at the school, and Josh Breitbart, who is our manager of advancement, who does a lot of our fundraising work, and Raquel Brown, director of operations and human resources. So if we could have Dan and Viva take over and talk to us about, we want to focus in on the MAP exam and what we're doing with MAP and what it means. That's as a entry point into the renewal conversation, which we'll be having throughout the year. Voika, your direction was, let's focus on MAP at this meeting, but we're going to examine the whole school and how we're preparing to meet the renewal benchmarks. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan or Aviva to talk through that.
Hi, I'm Aviva Buchler. I'm one of the co-principals. I've been at Harlem Link. This is my 11th year. I started actually as kindergarten teacher and throughout time went back to Bank Street for support with a leadership degree and became assistant principal and now obviously, as I shared, co-principal. So it's great to be here and to see all of our guests, and thank you for introducing yourselves as well. And so I'm going to share this with Dan to talk a little bit about MAP. And some of you may have heard about MAP or have seen it in the news or part of like education conversations. And so MAP is, a nationally research-based exam and we're going to talk about like a lot of different terminology, but it evaluates growth using national norms. And so SUNY, as our authorizer, takes MAP along with another assessment tool that they also agree with we're not using as a very important indicator of school success. And so we, in the past years, have shown and demonstrated academic success through a variety of internal assessments or other assessments that they have approved. But the MAP test in particular is exciting for us, and we've used it in the past about 10 years ago, but now we're back and using it. And it's a computer-based assessment that will see students' growth over time in both math and in ELA. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this. And Steve, if you want to move to the next slide. Yep, so this new test that we've rolled out with our entire faculty team and everybody at Summer Institute was, shared information on this exam and what this looks like. And we have now, in the busyness of September through October 1st, we have assessed all of our students from grades first grade all the way through fifth grade using the computer-based test for math and for ELA. And we believe that this MAP test will give us really important information to see growth over time and to better understand like how our students are performing compared to others, not just within our state, but within the country. And again, it's a norm reference test. And so there's a lot of language that they use to describe like what are the different scores mean. But we are basically trying to use this exam to also understand and predict whether or not a student is on track to meet the benchmarks of the state exam. And as you know, from last spring, with the New York State exams for ELA and for math for grades 3, 4, and 5, like things, with remote learning and the state of the city with the pandemic, it did not play out in the way that everything was typically played out. And so we are now in a space where we have the opportunity to show SUNY, our authorizer, what we are doing as a school to support student academic growth. And so this exam, and through data analysis and supporting the teachers with understanding the data and then making instructional decisions based on that data, will help to put us, we believe, in a really good standing to show SUNY who we are and what we're doing. Dan, if you want to add on specifically around state tests and connection to MAP.
Sure. I'm Dan Steinberg. I'm the other co-principal. This is my 10th year at Harlem Link. I was a fourth grade teacher for a little while. I went to Bank Street with Aviva and was AP for the last 5 years for the upper grades. We learned through our last couple of renewal cycles that SUNY cares about really specific things, and MAP speaks their language. And so for us, we were spending a lot of energy trying to translate the things that we do into a language that SUNY would care about and understand. I think they understood, but that mattered to them, or that they believe metrics they believed in. And so without state tests, which at the time of our last renewal hearing were low, they grew over the, I think, 4 years that we actually had them before they stopped. They went up every year, and then we haven't had them for 2 years, that we no longer had data to say that we were continuing to improve, that SUNY was able to kind of put their finger on and compare us with other schools. They told us they're not super into F&Ps and portfolios and all of those things. And so for us, it was a no-brainer to find a way to compare ourselves to other schools, and specifically one that would allow us to show growth students would have, especially coming out of the pandemic. We are apprehensive and sort of about a high stakes test like a state test after a pandemic when we're using absolute scores, but the opportunity to show the impact of our program over a school year to us was powerful and made sense. And so that's the reason why we have decided to do MAP. MAP, the NWEA offers support for our teachers, for our leadership team and our teachers to break down these reports. So they'll be meeting with our teachers in a couple of weeks to help them break down the data and plan around that. Our understanding, there is a learning curve because we've been, it's our first year using it in a long time, is a lot of the planning, because it's all standards based, is it's going to fall into the way that we've been looking at data, and this will be just another stream of it. So teachers can continue using small groups, we can continue with RTI and all of those things to help students continue progressing. But this will give us the data point to say this is where our students were when they came in, and this is where they ended the school year, and it's compared nationally.
Yeah, Steve, if you can go just to the next slides. I know this is some of the in-depth, what exactly is MAP and normative data. And specifically here, you're going to see this language, and we talk about RIT scale. And again, this is where when we look at the data more closely, and we'll be able to share this information with the Ed Committee and then further with the board once we are able to crunch the data with our MAP partners and the support that they're going to have for us. But this is just a little bit more information that you can read to better understand kind of who they are and how they are understanding normative data. If Steve, you can go to the next slide. And so I think this is just for everyone's information, what does a specific RIT score mean? And as we wrote here, it represents the level where a student is ready to learn, also known as the zone of proximal development. And so it helps us better zoom in to exactly what a child may be struggling in and what are some next steps and growth supports. And I'm really excited to see what resources they provide so that our teachers are able to take from their learning experience with our MAP partners to make instructional changes for the next couple of weeks until the next point where we do another set of assessments and so forth. If you can keep going. Yeah, and so I think this is back to Dan, a little bit more about why and compared to the state test. So go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, this is for us, it's a hard data point to replace the state test for the last couple of years. We haven't had them for 2 years. We realistically were never going to hit their absolute benchmarks, the 75% of students hitting level 3 and level 4 with the approach that we were, without serious compromises to the school's approach. But we don't believe we need to compromise our vision or our approach using MAP. And so we see this as a way to authentically assess how students are doing. We definitely are, seeing early signs of what worked and what didn't based on just a cursory look at the early year data for how our students across grade levels are doing, and seeing things like fluency with technology mattering a lot in the lower grades. But really when SUNY comes in and says how do you know where your students are, we're going to be speaking the same language. And we did find over the last cycle that was not always the case.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more just anecdote just from the school-based side for everybody to hear that, this was a tremendous effort. It took a lot of people to be able to pull students to do all this assessments while building classroom communities and welcoming everybody back on site after what has been and what continues to be a very stressful, challenging year with the pandemic as an ongoing piece. And so, a big thing that we're really focused on is reimagining what this school year has been looking like for our children and for our staff community being together in this space. And so I just want to commend all of our faculty and our entire wider team for really doing a phenomenal job with this assessment, given, all of the beginning of the years. We were doing this assessment from the second day of school because we knew how long it would take to make sure every child, especially with the beginning of the year things and making sure every child has the chance to sit and take this test on the computer and be supported emotionally and academically and supported in all of the ways to test. And so I just want to say thank you to all of our staff for making this happen.
I echo that. I want to just continue this by talking about the accountability element and then come back to any questions or comments. So we have an accountability plan, which is something we agreed upon with the Charter Schools Institute when we got renewed in 2018. And we are now shifting that accountability plan. We're working with the Institute because, well, because of this reason that there have been no state tests, as Dan mentioned, for a couple of years. So we are replacing our math interim assessment, which is one of the accountability measures. I'm going to just show you what that looks like. Each year, 75% of students in grades 1 to 5, blah, blah, blah. The board has seen this a million times. We've been measuring this every year. We're taking it out because this is the least valid and reliable measure we have on our accountability plan, and we're inserting MAP instead. And we are working with the Institute to determine what is that exact metric. They've given us a framework, and one of the things that's standing out in that framework that will likely be the accountability metric, and this may also replace the ELA one that's highlighted in yellow, which is our F&P, is what does our growth look like? So in the slides, there's a comment here about growth percentile. The board will see what our growth expectation is next month based on the fall scores. But the growth percentile is something that SUNY measures, for, I mean, MAP measures or NWA measures across the country for the tens or hundreds of thousands of students who take their tests. And they will compare our students' growth to the typical growth made by students across the country based on where they start. Students who are farther behind tend to catch up and advance more. So if you have a really low RIT score in the fall, your expected typical growth is higher than someone who's already above the median. They have a smaller growth that's expected because typically those students grow less as everyone regresses to the mean. So the accountability metric, the long and short of it is likely going to shift from looking at this absolute performance on this internal assessment to, are our students growing at a faster rate than the average school? So that's what you need to know as a board member about looking at MAP and what the data is telling us and what it means. And it's likely that'll be both ELA and math, although we've only talked to SUNY right now about math, but we think they're open to ELA too, because like Dan said, they're not into F&P because it isn't exactly valid and reliable in their eyes. So
And
comments, questions, anything to add?
Steve, are we retaining the other growth metrics? So it'll be almost like an internal growth metric and then external growth metric where the growth has to be above 50 per, and then the new metric will be the sort of apples to apples comparison to other schools.
No, I don't. I mean, it's just the first thing you said.
Okay.
It's the growth percentile is going to be comparing to other schools because it's the percentile plotted on a normal curve of other schools' experience. So there won't be any MAP, I don't think, any MAP comparison to other schools except for growth. How well are our kids growing? So we gave the assessment, we are where we are, and now we're in the same pot, so to speak, of every other student who scored at those levels. And are we advancing more now? What is the value added this year? Is it showing that our program is working and helping students to grow and achieve standards?
Got it. So so is the item under currently listed as growth staying and then being emphasized, and then the absolute metric on the 75% being taken out? Because it's not like a.
Let me go back and explain because I wasn't clear. Everything else that's not yellow is about the state tests in our accountability plan, and that's not changing.
Got it. I'm with you. Okay, so it's different tests. So, okay, I'm with you.
Any other questions, comments? Dr. Howard, you may not be familiar with this about our school, but I'm sure you've seen it before. At our 2018 renewal, the SUNY Board of Trustees Charter Schools Committee put conditions on our renewal. They said, because you've been around for 13 years and we're not seeing 75% passing, we're not seeing slam dunk test scores, we need to see you meet X number of metrics just to apply. So we're not going to give you any credit for being wonderful or any qualitative anything. We want to see the numbers. And the metric, the condition they put was you have to meet at least half of your accountability measures in both ELA and in math. So according to the Institute, that thinking is shifting because of the pandemic. But in the last year that we had state tests, we did meet half the metrics and we did not meet these internal measures. So if we continue that growth trajectory and we meet the same portion of state test metrics we met in 2019, and we can meet the MAP metrics, then we'll be above the minimum ask. If we can do the same performance we had 2 years ago, we'll be at the minimum ask. That's not a guarantee of renewal. It's not answering the question, is the school an academic success? But it's meeting the kind of hard line that the board of trustees put down for us. So we've been focused on those conditions and focused on that goal ever since we got renewed in 2018.
I'd just like to add one more thing that we've been talking about with school management and also with the board. And what that is that we only have 2 MAP cycles currently. And we're wrestling with the idea of if we should add a 3rd in the middle of the year. It's something that MAP in their, that MAP endorses that. We've gotten some other feedback that would be a good idea. While we need to also be forward thinking and looking at sustainability of the school program beyond renewal, my comment is specifically about renewal, that it could be a good idea to have 3 data points over the year that the school has time to respond to, rather than just a September and a June.
That would be a very good idea. I think it's a great idea. And thank you, everyone, for the explanation. That was a really thorough explanation of where things are. I had a question about how you're using the MAP data to look at curriculum. So what work has been done in terms of looking at standards and where students are?
Really just starting that, but Dan, do you want to?
Yeah, not a whole lot, to be honest. I think we made the decision to implement MAP towards the end of last school year, or I should say normative assessment, and then MAP over the summer. And so in terms of like using that data to evaluate programs that we had been building over a number of years, that we were evaluating using other data, we have not necessarily gotten very far, to be frank about it, I guess. I will say, just related to our conversations with MAP, and I think the representatives for MAP were agnostic about how many times we did it during the school year. They didn't care. They were like, some schools do it twice, sometimes they do it 3, some do it 4. I think we have no illusions about how many, about the questions it would invite if we only do it 2 times, about why we didn't and why we would be waiting till the end of the year. And I think the reason why there is any hesitation is just having eyes wide open about it is our first year of it. And so capacity we've been building and things like our test prep approach to the state tests, or our response to literacy data in other ways, or our internal assessments, we don't have that same internal capacity right now to be as dynamically or confidently using this data. And we don't, and so what is going to suffer as a result of taking more attention and putting it on a 3rd round of MAP and that data analysis. And it's definitely not to say that we shouldn't do it, but it's not something our school is fluently using right now. And so that's the consideration for us, just to put that out there.
And I just want to add, in terms of directly curriculum, we have obviously our units of study for math, writing, and reading. But what we're hoping, from the support from the MAP partners we have, is to be able, we have intervention blocks that are happening in math, and we have our stations blocks in our literacy. And so the hope is that from the data, to be truly data driven and supportive of what we're seeing from what we get our data from the map test is to be able to like implement that into those blocks of time. So it might not affect like a direct unit of study in our reading unit study, but it will affect directly other spaces that literacy intervention is happening along with math intervention too. And so that's kind of our hope, and we'll see how this first round of analysis goes. And we're going to get into that obviously in the next couple of weeks because we just finished the cycle. So that is exciting, but I think that we do have time and space to be able to address what we're noticing from the assessment itself. So that is a good thing. It might not directly translate to changing an entire unit of study, but it'll affect directly how we're teaching and implementing next steps grounded in the data we see.
So thank you for that. Let me just say that you cannot, I don't want you to view MAP as a test prep tool. It really is a way to really look into what is happening academically in the school. And I think Dr. Howard's question is really poignant, like how else are you using it besides looking at the kids? Because if you say, okay, the child is not doing well, you know, with inferencing, and then you think that it's just the child, you miss the point of the assessment. So you have to think about how your units of study are written, how the instruction is delivered. You have to think about whether or not the teacher is this their weak point, and then how are you then going to adjust professional development. You need to start to weave and interconnect the elements for the academic program. And I know, and I can hear you very clearly that it may seem overwhelming, but you cannot make really good informed decisions, I think, if you are waiting too long. You should have assessment cycles, and they should be in line with your intervention cycles. So if you're saying that a student is not doing well and you're going to do some intervention, and then you're going to wait 3 months to figure out what happened to the child, or if the child has improved, or if we're going to get those growth numbers that we're looking for, I think it might be too long. And so if MAP, which is very well researched and developed, is saying you need a third cycle, I would highly recommend that you take up and figure out how to get it done, and figure out how to interweave all of the elements. And I know it's difficult. And as you said, you've just taken it on. So I just want you to think about that. And we can talk about it more at another time.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think it's exciting to have the first opportunity to see the data for our first time with our students grades 1 to 5. And I think as we go through the cycles, we'll be able to see the ways it will impact directly curriculum. I know that we have many cycles of assessment and collection of data through unit tests from our level 4 FMPs and all of the other ways that we're collecting data and making changes to curriculum based on that. So this will be obviously another very important, highly important data point for us to figure out some next steps and directly linked to our entire academic program. So thank you for that.
So this will be something the Ed Committee discusses in a lot more detail at the next meeting, and we'll hear more about it over the course of the year. And the accountability plan. Thank you, everybody, for the conversation. Last thing from the Education Committee or the school report is a quick update on how the shift in roles is going. Boyka asked us to just put this on the agenda and spend a few minutes. We have an early in the year quick update to share. There's not much to say other than we're following the plan. And at least from my vantage point, the plan's making a lot of sense. Margaret and I have empowered Dan and Viva to take on the full-on instructional leadership of the school as co-principals. And this is a very simple, quick and dirty chart showing how the shift in responsibilities has happened. And things like being able to get into the weeds with the enrollment issues and being out in the community more, these are things that are now possible for me and Margaret that were not possible in the past because of this shift. And just as a reminder, no additional staff have been added to the administration as a result of this shift. It's purely a change in roles, and it's been a streamlining and a clarifying. And I know we're out of time, but if anybody else on the team would like to share a word or two about how this is progressing and how the shift is happening, please do, because I know the board is interested in how the impact of this big change that happened in the summer is happening at the school.
If I can just add on to that. Dan and Aviva, we do, as a board, want to be sure that Steve is not dabbling in things he shouldn't be. We really do want him to make the shift and have him available for other things that, as he's just described, needs to be worked on. So if you feel like he's hovering around too much, you can just swat him away. Don't worry about it. We've got your back.
Don't worry, they do it anyway. Yeah, they don't need your permission.
Thank you though for the blessing, for sure. It's good to know we've got backup.
All right.
Okay, the last order of business is actually a quick note about Harlem Link email accounts, which we'll be emailing to board members about. Some of you, John Reddick, Marie, Voika, are using Harlem Link email addresses now. But in order to give them, if you can explain this if you want, but I can try because you've been leading this effort, but to give all the board members access to school files and in a secure manner, so that you can go and look and see board information without having to request it. And you can also, there'll be a dedicated board folder that we're building in Google Drive. And you can also know that that data is secure and protected for following FERPA through our Google G Suite account. We're going to ask every board member to initiate a harlemlink.org email address, which has been created for you, and use that when you're conducting board business for accessing files. We will be able to have the email forward to your personal email or your work email if you'd like, but you'll need the harlemlink.org login that you'll create to access the files as we roll this out over the course of the year. And
just to add clarity to it, this is an endeavor to be sure that we have as much information as is needed for oversight, and that we can access it without having to burden Steve or Dan or Aviva or Margaret. We can go in and take a look. And it is also part of an endeavor to digitize the dashboard in general, so that we can manipulate data and numbers so that we can ask informed questions. For me personally, it took me months before I started using the account, but now that I am all in. Emails get answered faster because I know where they are and where they're coming from. So I encourage everyone on the board, once you get your email, to start to use it and familiarize yourself with it if you're not already. For me, using Microsoft, I'm an Apple's person. So using the Microsoft, what is it? OneDrive, Drive One. I'm still learning. It was a little bit difficult, but I encourage everyone to go ahead and get started on it. Thank you.
So we'll be sending that out. We're waiting a little. We're just waiting on further clarity from our tech folks if board members need to request in advance if they want to have their emails forwarded, or if that's something that they can do themselves. It was kind of it was very blurry answer that they gave us, so we're trying to get clarity, and then we'll send out everybody's links with your new emails, your first and your last name at harlemlink.org. Isn't that exciting? Yeah, everyone looks so excited right now.
I can tell Voika's addicted, and I think you will be too. It's exciting. Harlemlink.org. Well, let's end this evening. I know you're going to close us out, Voika, but I wanted to say, especially with the new energy from people coming in to the room, recognizing the volunteer work that board members are doing, it's really powerful. I mean, this is our work, but this is your volunteer time and it's really appreciated. The attention that our kids get because of the brain power in this team it's really unique. You don't see that in a public school system typically. So thank you for your time and all the attention and tough questions and thinking. Okay, do you want to close us out?
Yes, thank all of you for attending tonight as well, particularly our guests. So if there are no other orders of business, I would like to bring the meeting to a close.
Josh, you have an order of business?
Two very quick things, just because I was very focused on the Giving Tuesday that I forgot two of them. Number one, next week, I promised Marianne I would plug it. We have our alumni reunion. Will be HL graduating class of 18 and 19, making up for the year we weren't able to do because of the pandemic of it all. We invite, if board members are able to come, let us know. Email me or Marianne Van Auken. But it's gonna be a nice big reunion, and this is one of our big events that's really nice to be able to go back to. And I just also want to shout out that we're also doing NYC Kids Rise. I thought this would be some nice good news where all of our kindergarten students are being given bank accounts to help start saving for college. They all get started with $100 in there, and we're rolling this out right now. So a lot of other really cool, positive things. Let us know if you want to get involved in that stuff too. So I just wanted to shout that stuff out as well.
That's great. I love the bank account part.
Yeah.
So-
Can you tell us more information about that, Josh? I would love to get more. I'm not programs, so I would love to hear more about it in detail.
Yeah, sure. I could send you after this meeting as well the additional information, but I'll just kind of sum it up really quick, which is it's a New York City government program. Aviva, Marianne, and I are all working on it with the kindergarten teachers. What's great about it is once we sign up for it, the kids are opted in automatically. It's done. For this year, it's just kindergarten. So unfortunately, no first grade, no pre-K, no other ones. I think they're hoping that if this thing is a success, they'll extend it then. I believe, I had to double check on this. I think it's called a 529 account, which is specifically made for kids saving for college. If parents have already started one of those accounts, they can actually rope it in as well so that they can kind of keep doing it. And the idea is they'll get the bank account put in there, $100 automatically put in there, and they can automatically start letting that accrue and invest. I have to review exactly how it is when it comes to depositing more into that account and investing further. The big thing that's going to be going on for the next 30 days is, like I said, everyone is opted in. It's automatic once we did. But for the next 30 days, we're telling parents all the information and they decide if they want to opt out. So what we'll be doing is we'll be sharing all that information with them. I'll be sending you, Brandy, and anyone else who wants to know more about it. I can send you some of the information as far as from the website, some of the details about it, and just how it kind of works as far as being able to take it out at a later date.
Josh, I would definitely send that out to the entire board.
Cool. Let me touch base with Marianne tomorrow because we were trying to figure out the best kind of way to get that information that wasn't just visit the website if you want more information. We're trying to see if we can kind of get a consolidated thing.
Josh, I've been working on it. I've been working on it at the DOE, just getting the word out. So I have a lot of information if you need it.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Let me, I'll reach out to you after this and we'll touch base on that a little bit. And, but yeah, I'll send everything else out. I'll forward it out to everyone else as well so we can get more information. We'll keep you posted. We'll have a little more information by the next board meeting, I assume.
Josh, is this something that donors can contribute to if it's a 529?
I know it wasn't as simple as you could just throw whatever in there. As far as what specifically goes, I mean, the idea of the bank account is that you are supposed to keep putting stuff into there. As far as the specific rules of how that works, I have to like re-look at it and see how it is. There is a very interesting thought of how we can do this, donating there. As far as the specifics of that, I couldn't answer. Laura, if you know, jump in, but I'm not sure.
I don't know the details about donors. specifically, but we can definitely look into that for sure.
We will let everyone know, and we'll have more detailed Q&A next time, because by that point, the opt-out period will be over.
Maybe something that would be good for us to understand as well is is this something that we can automatically do for our kindergartners every year moving forward? So it's just something that we can talk to parents about, even bring it into our orientations, but it's just like, when you come to our school and you're a kindergartner, we set you up with a bank account, and it's a college fund.
That'd be amazing if this keeps going every single year. Absolutely. I think it's just slam dunk all around.
Okay, are there any other announcements? Any burning? Anything? Okay, great. So we'll bring this meeting to a close. It's been very informative. I think the leadership. And am I seconding? I can't remember. Do I second for a close?
You nominate the closure and then someone else second.
Okay.
I
Motion.
second.
Thank you. All right. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. I look forward to the committee meetings this month.
Thank you.
Thank you.